Today, I'll be ranking the 10 best coasters from my trip. Now that I have ranked all the individual parks, I want to stack all of them up against one another to see which are the best for my 2025 coaster trip. Now, a fun twist on this video, I will put, maybe in the top right corner, don't know exactly yet, put the pre-trip rankings to see if they met, exceeded, or failed expectations. But the one ride that I couldn't ride that was on my previous list was Storm Runner, but let's dive in. Even if last place Rapterra is still a good ride. This falls slightly, being that it was at my number 8 in my pre-trip rankings, and that is for a couple of reasons. First, it was rougher than expected for a new ride. Even B&Ms from the 90s are smoother like Raptor, and it just doesn't make sense. Plus, the first half was not really that good to me. But past all the bad stuff, I loved the launch even more than I thought I would, and was my favorite part of the ride. Then the second half with the Outer Bank, Corkscrew, Raptor Roll are all back to back to back, and was a great sequence of hang time filled elements. I wish there was a near miss somewhere, but this is still a solid B&M ride. The 9th spot is going to Fahrenheit, previously unranked and was one of my favorite loopers from the trip. That first drop is very similar to Maverick, being it's very steep and filled with super powerful ejector airtime. Following that, you have the Norwegian loop, which is odd, but I liked it having some solid floater airtime at the top and then some powerful G's at the bottom. Then you have the Cobra Roll, which is just alright and definitely the roughest part on the ride, which kind of brings it down a little bit. Then the ending is very good, having 2 whippy corkscrews that are back to back, and then a Maverick-style airtime hill with some more ejector airtime. This ride is basically Maverick if it had more inversions and one less airtime hill, just good overall. Griffon is up next. Griffon rose 1 spot from 9 to 8, and I like this ride a lot. Griffon is a dive coaster with this OG B&M restraint, so compared to a ride like Valravn, it is easier to get that sweet airtime on all the drops. Which Griffon has 2 amazing drops filled with airtime, plus a little hill before the splashdown that gives some solid airtime then, and the actual splashdown itself, which is a cool spectacle off-ride. I will say, outside of the drops, Griffon doesn't have much of a layout. Valravn has a 0G roll and airtime hill after its drops that spice up the ride a little bit, and Griffon doesn't have any of that. Ride is still amazing though, and I think I like it more than Valravn overall. 7th place is Alpengeist, one of the most intense rides that I've ever ridden. It was even more intense than I expected. I knew it was going to be intense since it's an invert, and all the other inverts I've ridden have been intense, but it's nothing like I've ridden before. And a lot of the reason why it's so intense is just the straight up scale of the ride. The first drop is huge, being almost 200 feet in the sky. After that, you have a Immelmann, which it's intense, but then rolls right into the loop, which just rips through it and your legs go numb. Then you have the Cobra Roll, which is so whippy and feels like it's trying to rip you apart. The second half is not quite as intense, holding the ride back from being as high as I previously thought it was going to be, but it's still great overall. A very, very underrated ride, and Grizzly is up next. The biggest riser out of all the coasters I went on this trip, being that it wasn't even in my top 10 most anticipated, and it almost cracked the top 5. This ride is just amazing, being filled with every force that you want in a wooden coaster. It has amazing airtime with that first drop ejecting you out of your seat in the back, and the 2 ejector hills after the turnaround, which are spectacular. Then you have some lateral field turns that are super strong and just pin you to the side of the train and makes it feel like you just can't move. The first half is remarkably smooth, but I can't really say that about the second half. You still have some rougher hills, but they're not quite as good as the ejector hills. But it's still amazing overall. Can't complain about this one. All the rides in the top 5 are super close to my rankings, all of them being top 15 coasters that I've ridden, but the 5th spot has to go to the B&M Hyper Candemonium is the first of the top 5. For some reason, I was kind of sleeping on this ride, being that it wasn't even in my top 5 for most anticipated, and I think this was for a couple of different reasons. I think the reason why I slept on it was because some people say it's the worst B&M Hyper out there, but still, a B&M Hyper is a Hyper. The first drop is always a gut punch and filled with some amazing floaty airtime. Then you have 2 amazing floater hills and a speed hill with a solid pop of ejector airtime. The second half is very similar to Mako in that it's just a bunch of turns, and it's just not all that for me. But nobody can complain about a smooth airtime filled ride, which is why it's in the top 5. The multi-launch Pantheon lands here. Even though it did land higher than I expected, I thought it was slightly underwhelming. And in no way is me saying it's underwhelming bad. I was just expecting a little bit more ejector airtime. The swing launch is amazing, and it had 2 immaculate pops of RMC level airtime, and the spike is pretty good as well. The top hat is good, and in the back you are whipped, but in the front it's pretty not that great with almost no airtime. Then the Outer Bank is just light floater, no ejector. The stall is cool, and then the final hill into the brakes has some nice airtime as well. The ride's pretty good overall. It's just there's only about 4 ejector pops when I was expecting about 6. Sky Rush slides into the third spot. I think it's safe to say that my one and only ride on this Intamin was crazy, it was phenomenal, and it was just a blur of a ride. I sat on the very back wing seat, which was just crazy. The first drop is nuts having ejector airtime, but then there's like a hitch halfway down that just sends you into the atmosphere. Then you have two hills that you fly over, getting some good ejector, and some turns between them that have some solid intensity. Then the second half I wasn't crazy for. The hills just have some light floater, but it was still good overall. Great airtime moments across the thing, and I didn't think it was that rough either. I think it was very similar to Millennium Force in my opinion. The second spot goes to Twisted Timbers, in the exact same place I thought it would be, and it was super close between this and the number one spot, like really close. But this ride is outstanding, and so are all of the rides that I got, especially those night rides. Those night rides were amazing. First is the drop, and it isn't huge, which is kind of the whole theme of this ride. It's very low to the ground, but makes up for it in power, being that it's one of the most powerful coasters out there. The barrel roll down drop is pretty good, and you get whipped through it in the back. Then you have back-to-back-to-back airtime hills that all have amazing ejector airtime. Then you hit a little low-to-the-ground moments, which include the outer bank, the zero-G roll, and endless airtime hills, with many having great ejector like usual. It's just so powerful, so fun, and a top 5 coaster that I've been on. Number 1 is Wildcats Revenge, another top 5 coaster that I've been on. This ride just shows how much RMC can do with their layout design, having RMC staples and other amazing elements, even though are wonky, fit really well into this ride. The drop is a decent size, and just like most other RMCs, has good ejector in the back of the train. Then the underflip is basically just a zero-G roll. It's very fun, you're high in the sky, I like it a lot. A straight airtime hill follows with amazing airtime, can't complain about a straight airtime hill with just straight ejector. Some outer bank hills, you get some good off-bank airtime, and then you roll into the zero-G stall, which has some very good floaty feeling. You have some more sideways airtime, and then the double down, which is a strong mix of airtime and laterals. Then to finish the ride, you have some zero-G rolls and more ejector to finish out this amazing ride. It has inversions, good airtime, and many unique elements. It's just very good all around. Thanks for watching. This trip was a lot of fun. I loved all 3 parks we went to: Hershey Park, Kings Dominion, Busch Gardens. They were all wonderful. And I would love to do another trip in the future if I could. But tell me what rides you think should have been up a little bit more, or maybe what rides should have been down a little bit more. But other than that, have a good day.